Today we're going to discuss the end part of Chapter 7. Julia Woods, author of Interpersonal Communications, Everyday Encounters, tells us about emotional intelligence, what influences the meaning of our emotions, and obstacles from us understanding and communicating our emotions effectively. Sophia, Ashley, and myself are going to discuss 6 guidelines Wood gives us to help us understand and express our emotions, and also help us to understand and respond appropriately to others and their emotions. I'm going to start off the presentation by giving you the first 2 guidelines. The first guideline, she tells us that we need to identify our emotions effectively, or be able to identify our emotions so we can effectively communicate them. She says there's a couple of different things that could interfere with us being able to identify our emotions. One of them is cultural and societal expectations of us, and then the other is we have several emotions at the same time. Wood gives us an example of social expectations. In Western society, a lot of times men are taught not to express a lot of their emotions, so they might have a harder time identifying certain emotions. As far as having several emotions at the same time, an example of that could be going to a daughter's wedding, being happy for them because they're happy, but also being sad because they're old enough to be able to get married. The second guideline is to choose if and when to express the emotions. Now, sometimes we hold back on expressing emotions because there's not going to be any positive outcome. The other reason could be because we just want to keep our emotions private. And Wood tells us that it's okay to not always express our emotions as long as it's not hurting others or hurting ourselves and hurting our relationships. Now, if we do decide to express our emotions, Wood gives us 4 different guidelines for that. First of all, we need to be in the right frame of mind. If we're angry at a coworker, we might not want to go and talk to them right away because we might say something that we're going to regret. Wood tells us that language is irreversible, so once it's said, it's out there, you cannot take it back. The second guideline is we might want to think about who we want to talk to, because if you're really angry at somebody, you might not want to express those emotions to them, especially at first. The third guideline is everybody up for that conversation? You're not too tired, you're not too busy, because Wood tells us if we're going to have a conversation, we need to be completely there for that conversation to get the most out of it. The last guideline is, are we in the appropriate place for that conversation? Again, if you're mad at a coworker, the most appropriate place might not be a public area, but a private area so other people can't overhear you. Now that I've discussed the first 2 guidelines of identifying your emotions and how to communicate those, Sophia is going to go over the next 3 guidelines.
The next 3 guidelines that I will go over are own your feelings, monitor your self-talk, and adopt rational emotive approach to feelings. Owning your feelings is extremely important to effective communication. As Wood states on page 209, we, not anyone else, have responsibility for our own feelings. When we accuse others, we are taking away our accountability and not holding ourselves responsible for our own emotions. Using I statements to criticize our own personalities and self, rather than putting the responsibility for our emotions and feelings on other people, helps the other person listen thoughtfully and be more understanding of our emotions. We have to realize that our emotions are based off of our own choices, and we have the ability to monitor them through self-talk. The 4th guideline Wood presents us with is monitor your self-talk. Communication with yourself and working through your emotions. Psychologist Martin Seligman, 1990, says, our thoughts are not merely reactions to events, they change what ensues. Meaning that what we think about affects our day-to-day lives and as well as our future. As long as we manage our self-talk and try not to focus on our self-defeating thoughts, it can be helpful rather than harmful in managing your emotions. Until we manage our feelings effectively, we cannot change our patterns of behavior and begin appreciating the connections between our thoughts and feelings. The 5th guideline that the book offers is adopt a rational emotive approach to feelings. Wood defines which Wood defines as using rational thinking and self-talk to challenge debilitating thoughts about emotions that undermine healthy self-concepts and relationships, on page 386. There are 4 steps to engage in the rational emotive approach to feelings. The first step is monitoring your emotional reactions to interactions and situations that can cause distress or pique your anxiety. Monitor your gut feelings and take note of any signs of anxiety, like heart racing, teeth clenching, and clammy hands. Wood states that the second step is to identify the events and situations to which you have unpleasant responses. Many situations where you feel insecure when talking to someone, you feel like this person has more power than you. And so that makes you more insecure during your connection. The third step is to tune into self talk by identifying and defining your own emotions. Are you repressing certain emotions or denying your feelings? The fourth step is to use our self talk to challenge these debilitating ways of thinking about our emotions. We need to recognize that focusing on our faults and debilitating thoughts rather than using our self talk to question and challenge the irrational thinking that undermines us. Wood, page 211, can defeat our effectiveness. The final guideline presented by Wood is to respond sensitively when others communicate emotions, which Audrey will help explain. Which Ashley will help explain. I think she's frozen.